Let's continue with our code alongs. On the left of the screen, you'll see that we have a new exercise. So we're given a table with names and salaries as the columns, and we want to modify the salary column by multiplying each salary by 2. So the output really is going to be, uh, you know, the same columns are intact, but every salary, as you can see, has been doubled. From 19,000 something, we went to 39,000. From 74,000, we went to 149,000, and so on and so forth. So we're going to see how we can do that with pandas very easily. This is helpful if you want to run sort of mass uh, or execute uh, mass calculations on a single column, right? Notice how the column is actually a integer column, right? We wouldn't be able to double the name column, right? So, wherever we have columns that are integers, it helps to know such techniques where we can manipulate the actual values of the rows, um, in a very easy way. So what I'll quickly do here is, as always, let's create our data. So we're going to have 4 rows, right? Sorry. So it should look something like this, where we have a list which has 4 additional lists. And for the first one, we pass in Jack, and the value is 19,666. The second is called Piper, and the value is 74,754. The third column is called Mia, and their value is 62,509. And our last employee is called Ulysses, with a salary of 54,866. So I'll run this cell, and let's start creating our data frame. So I'm going to call this the employee data frame. So again, we use the data frame from pandas. That's why we're writing pandas dot. And then for our data, we pass in our salary data. And then for our columns, I'm just going to initialize it here since we only have 2 columns. Call it name, and the other is salary, right? And then if I run this, so I'm getting some sort of error, and the error is saying incomplete input, and it's pointing to this place here. So I can see that I didn't close parentheses, right? Now my parentheses are matching up, so I'll press run. Now if I check the employee table or the employee data frame, I can see it sort of replicates this exactly, right? And now we basically just have to modify the salary column and double it, right? So let's write down what our task is. So this is a good practice for you to, um, you know, do on a regular basis when you're coding. First, to write out what you have to do in English, and then do each step one by one, right? In a linear fashion. So our first thing is basically to focus in on the salary. column, because we're only focusing on the salary column. We want to do something with it. In this case, we want to multiply everything by 2. So that's our next step. Double each value in each row of the salary column. And the third step is to update the salary column with a doubled salary, right? So these are basically our tasks. So how do we go about doing that? Well, let's look at the first thing. We have to focus in on the salary column. How do we do that given that, this whole table is stored in the employee variable? Well, from past videos, we saw that we can use this open square brackets and write the name of the column that we want to focus in on. Now we're strictly focusing on the salary column. If I press run, I'm only going to get the values in the salary column, right? Our next step is to double each value in each row of the salary column. So for that, I'm just going to reassign the values, right? I'm going to set it equal to, again, I'm going to, get the value for each row in the salary column by calling this same function again. And then I'm going to multiply it by 2, right? Because we have to double the salary. So before I run this, I just want to explain this, Here we're focusing on the salary column, right? And then we're basically saying for each value in that row, right? Multiply each value by 2. And this is really the syntax to do that. If you want to look at this row and then this row and then this row and then this row, you know, you you use these open square brackets and then write the name of the column. Right? So if I run this, something happened in the background. Let's quickly check our table now to see if things updated. So you see how the salaries are now doubled, right? And you can match this with the expected output, right? Where each salary has been doubled. So let's talk about this a little bit more. What exactly did we do, right? So we basically updated existing values of a column, right? So for that, we accessed the row values for salary and multiplied it by 2, right? This multiply it by 2 comes from this piece of code, right? The next step was that we set this new computation as the new row value for salary, right? And that comes from this first half of the code. Right? So to update and access a value in the row, right? For each row in the column, we have this piece of code. And then to set it equal to that new value, we have this piece of code. And then, here is the completed code. And we saw that the execution of this code resulted in the correct output.